The Canam group provides construction products and solutions specialized in steel structures and services surrounding steel structures. So we are a subcontractor, and we are also publicly, we're on stock exchange. We had our 50th anniversary in 2011. Mr. Marcel Dutil and his son Marc has taken over as of this year. In 2011, we had sales in excess of 750 million. We announced that for the end of 2011, 811 million in business revenues. More than 3,500 employees spread out throughout the world, and more than 10,000 projects per year. Many of those are small projects where we provide structural components for buildings, but also major projects such as stadiums and bridges, and we will be looking at the kind of thing that we do. So as I mentioned earlier, we have different types of products. When we look at Canam divisions, it's mostly joists, floor components. We do bridges, big steel structures like stadiums, and Intelibuild, the division that I'm in charge of, stems from the history of steel to put to profit for the organization the different possibilities that now originally the 3D and BIM, what we call virtual construction. So the Intelibuild, the division, is the entity within the Canam group which specializes in offering these services, mostly in the case of complex buildings. We've got more than 350 resources spread over Canada, Romania, India, and an office in Hong Kong. One of our characteristics is that people within this group have not only experience in modeling, but also in construction. And we'll come back to it a little later. It's an element that has a great impact in the proper use of the BIM process in the framework of projects. We try to remain at the leading edge. My computer side of my knowledge is, yes, we use different computer platforms. We use both modeling resources and computer resources in order to get the best out of our software. We know that there are problems with regards to interoperability among the different software, but that's one of the things we try to do to add value for our customers. We have a relationship with the main suppliers. We are part of beta tests and test teams in order to better understand where the company or the industry is headed and how to adapt these solutions and adding value to all of Canam's clients. We also have a little team dedicated to that. It's a research and development team in which we have the different platforms. We test things. We see how we can improve things. But the way that we work and also develop things that will help those who sell products as those who sell services within our company.
In the future, in our Hong Kong office as well as here, we have won prizes for on the use of the BIMs. So we use this as a tool, a marketing tool. We are a subcontractor, but with the gradual development that we're experiencing and the development of IPDs, the design build, etc., we want to be able to position ourselves within the industry as a steel manufacturer to be able to become involved in the projects and to help the main teams in these big projects and to increase the added value. And if we increase the value and our application increases, there'll be more profit, as is the case with any organization that wants to make money. Why do we believe in the BIM, and why did we decide to invest in BIM? And we saw a way of saving time and saving money. Everyone has this objective, and there were real possibilities at this level, so that's why we decided to get involved. We could also add value for our clients, not only for a service that we're selling, rather than being the victim in the BIM, you'll have to provide a model, and you say, no, there's this, there's that. We decided to be proactive and not be victims, to become involved and be an interesting partner with the industry as a whole. If you go on the website, the Canam website, there are 3 areas of development. One related to manufacturing performance, one that is related to the environment, and the third is leadership in the digital field. The construction industry is catching up in using computer information technology, and we wanted to remain at the leading edge and be leaders in our industry for this type of technology. But when we look at this, the most important problem, what we try most to do and what we try to promote with our clients so that they get involved is to reduce risks in a project. More things are resolved virtually. We save costs, we save energy, we avoid legal action. So the idea is to reduce risk and to reduce contingencies in a project. And the fewer there are contingencies, the more profit there is. So there are 2 facets that I will deal with. We use BIM technologies internally for our internal needs to help the various divisions within the group, but we also use them to offer external services where we're not necessarily involved as manufacturers. So I'll cover both areas. Internally, being a steel structure manufacturer, we've been doing 3D modeling for a long time. The steel industry was probably the first industry to use the 3D. Not only have we developed our capacity to modelize with steel, but we, in many projects, the steel had to be linked to the cement. People in the cement industry did not necessarily have the capacity needed, so we made models for them. So we gradually developed an integration of these fields, and there were exchanges with different parts of the industry. We developed various types of projects, small projects, where some technologies are used more than others. So we've succeeded over the years in developing expertise in Revit, with Revit, the SDS2, which is a technology used for design, structural design of steel structures. We also developed over the years, because we have offices throughout the world, I mentioned Canada, Romania, India, and Hong Kong, we have the capacity to work on many sites at the same time. And in major projects, we often call upon subcontractors to do the modelization with us. Some of our colleagues are in the room here today. And this has brought us over the years to develop, and we've done this for a long time, the capacity to exchange models, to circulate information, to share, and to have processes that allow this. Initially, it's more difficult. People thought that we should do everything internally, but we found that it's better to share and to establish things, ways of working with the outside world that improves everyone's performance. Once we had 3D models, we said technology is fine, but how can we render a model more intelligent and have the characteristics in terms of material, of size, but with time we also developed external tools, the management of RFIs. We had a tool, an RFI tool, that allowed us to, if we could link them to our model, it would be great. So we created a way of linking RFIs to our model. This is hard to see. There are question marks upside down on some of the parts, but in the model you click and it will open the information in the other application. So it's not only the integrated model that we use, but also the capacity of the models to interact with tools that are outside of the models. Same thing for engineering drawings or sketches. This is very important for us. These are elements that we're able to add and to interact with other models. In terms of cooperation, importing of reference models, The client says, I have a model, I want to use it. With time, using various products allowed us to import various reference models. We couldn't say that one model in particular was alone, was unique. We'd also done this with architectural models, and when people do MEP in 3D, they like to integrate these aspects, even if it may not be legally the total truth. They can still be used as a reference to generate interesting questions. Cooperations with outside design consultants. We also started during the past few years to share with the design consultants. We share different models. Engineers used to we send the 3D model back. There still are signed documents, but there's exchanges with various partners so as to encourage people to use the 3D models. People quickly realized that the visual aspect helped to improve the relationship, to understand the understanding, and to reduce ambiguity by using 3D tools. Same thing with general contractors. More and more we share the models, especially projects where the general contractor is a person who is coordinating all of the models. Also with other subcontractors, there are principles of coordination. Certain things that we don't do in steel and aluminum, for instance, that we use our cooperation with others to do it. When we have to resubmit plans for approval, we're starting to develop a tool that allows us to do it. This is a tool that gives a 3D model with electronic approval, again to activate and simplify the whole process. In the preliminary construction phases, we have to determine the volumetry. Based on the models, these are things that we can do and that can, again, add value. As you can see, why would we not animate these models? So we started transferring them into animation tools, and when we promote some of our products or when we want to present things to our clients, it has become very useful. Subsequently, in complex operations, this is a new stadium of the Marlins in Florida. When the trusses on the roofs were implemented, we wanted to show how they could be removed from the temporary structure and transferred to the permanent structure. People wanted us to explain how we did this. We had a choice of having a multitude of drawings. Instead, we created an animation, and people quickly understood. And we were able to extract this animation from our 3D models. Now in the major projects, at the sales level, our people would not dare going to see clients without these 3D animation models. We're not talking about the construction phase, where it's only in the pre-sale stage, but it still adds value for the client. During the project as well, to indicate how the project is evolving, there can be reports, PowerPoints. No, we said we'll take our 3D model. This is BC Place, where we worked during the past 2 years to replace the roof on BC Place in Vancouver. We have a 3D model. Why shouldn't we use it? So, with the client and with the contractor to explain where we were at. So we used the information that was part of the model, what phase it was at, and we used this and used animation to produce information that was much easier for the client to follow and to understand. Here again, this added value to what we were doing, always based on 3D models that initially weren't designed for this purpose. More and more, one of our main projects, the steel beams, the engineers, we could provide models, but currently we're developing 4 engineers who are working on the design of buildings parameters that they will be able to use to create within their own models a preliminary version of our products in order to allow them, especially with the beams, to allow them to see in advance whether there'll be any interference with mechanical components, for instance. But it's not the final configuration because we still reserve the right to modify it when we're. But this will allow more and more engineers to foresee in their own models, even before it reaches our desks, the impact of the products that they intend to use in their projects. These parameters allow flexible geometry, and depending on the geometry, they will be adapted to the type of beam. More the beam is long, more its components or its design will automatically adjust, and will allow the engineers to have a better idea and allow engineers to position themselves very accurately to foresee interference and see how the structure, the final structure, can be modified if need be, but usually in the course of the design of the building, the impact of the components can be seen on time. When we prepare the 3D models, we do this. When we do the structure as a whole, we have the total model. When we only provide the joists, it is not us who design the models. But before people would send us drawings, we analyze the joists, and we would send them back a design telling them how to prepare the joists when they were doing the installation. Today, by using all the information that's available through the BIM, the person or the company that's designing can put symbolic joists, so to speak, in the model, and will extract the information electronically from their model and will send it to us. So instead of having drawings where there will be problems of interpretation or mistakes, we receive the information electronically from the people who did the 3D model. We will import it into our own software electronically. We design the joists, and we re-export the information, the data, and we send it to the client with a properly put joists in their own models. So this allows proper functioning rather than having two series of drawings. They can do detection analysis, for instance, during the construction phase. So we added value throughout a process. Initially, they just asked us to provide a physical product, a joist. There's nothing sexy about a joist, but we added value to what we were offering to our clients. As we develop this expertise, there are still many other things. How do we get this expert help if we wanted to add even more within the framework of an IPD project, design assist, where yes, people would want to use BIM, but they don't have all of the resources and the cooperation from all partners to do so. So we started asking ourselves how we could get more involved by widening the BIM services that we offered. The first thing we did, we were put into contact with a small firm in Hong Kong called Intelibuild that did this type of thing. We communicated, we decided that we would buy part of the assets of this company, and thereby we learned how things worked in the project, or if we're called upon to work on the project as steel manufacturers on a project, we can complement the team if it's to everyone's benefit. I'll use two major projects as examples. One in Hong Kong to give an idea of the range of services that we can offer and the opportunities that BIM provides us for big projects. The first one is the West Kowloon Terminus in Hong Kong. It's a terminal. It's a train terminal for a train, high-speed train line between Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong. It's an underground terminus. The architecture is quite sophisticated. We are working directly for the client, the owner of this project, which is a mass transit railway. And in order to pre-qualify, we had to go through a pre-qualification phase and an open bid process. So we were called upon to explain what we were doing, how we can do it, and in what framework it could be used. To give you an idea of the scope of the project, what you see in red, the red round is from above. It's the stadium, the Meadowlands for the New York Jets. And the other one, the rectangle on the right, is the construction site of the West Kowloon Terminal in Hong Kong. So it's a major impact. We have 3 mandates. Firstly, the modelization and the coordination of structures and architecture. We had 178 days that were allocated. We're currently doing the modelization of the MEP and to detect interference with the 2 other preceding models. There are 210 days that are foreseen for this mandate, and there's a total of 1,199 days for the overall project. We are ensuring the process management, the BIM process management. Someone has to have ultimate responsibility, otherwise it's very hard to agree. There has to be a good process that properly defines who does what and when. So we have a coordinating team that's on site with the client who works with the architects and the engineers in order to make sure that there's good cooperation and understanding among the parties. And the standards had been, in this case, had been provided by the client. This information was given. The level of detail of the models was provided to us by the client. We ensure the governance of the BIM processes, the integration, the maintenance, the follow-up. We establish the collaboration rules. In such a project, we're not talking about one model. That was not the purpose, because technologically it was nearly impossible to function. So the project is divided into sectors, and each sector there is a group of models. So the approach we took was that each participant has his own model and keeps the integrity of its own models. We combine the models, we analyze them, we look for interference, and we come back to the people and we give them the information. The partners keep their own models fully. They're fully to avoid legal problems, people saying you use my model without authorization, so to avoid this kind of problem. We provide modeling services for certain partners. Some partners do it themselves, others cannot do it, so we are able to ensure modeling services. We were the Autodesk Revit for this project. So we ensure the modeling. Our own teams do provide modeling services. Not all teams are on site. Coordination is done on site, but our modeling teams are mainly in Romania and in India. So we share the transfer of information when need be. WKT coordination, we use Naviswork. We're in a train station. So we have to make sure that not only there's no interference in the structure and the architecture, but we also have to make sure that the people or the vehicles that are moving can do so normally. There are also analyses that are currently being done for signaling. Is the signaling easily seen by people? All this again based on 3D models. Is it easy to access the equipment for repairs or for moving it? These are also elements that can be validated. So it's not only solid interference that we're looking for. We do Nevis work, there's no interference, everything is over. No, it has to be also needed to validate other elements that will affect the use and the utility of the building subsequently. So we analyze. There's an analysis process that allows us to use primary systems first and then secondary systems second. There's no point in having 400 clashes and say we will resolve problems. No. The value added to have someone in the team who is experienced in construction is what we offer. If you only have people who do modelization, we can spend a lot of time preparing models, but we won't necessarily get much out of it. The importance is to have people who are knowledgeable in construction and know that, for instance, a 1/2 inch pipe, it's no point in modelizing it. It's not worth it, as an example. So, in the way we normally work, we try to, in the short term, we would want the BIM to be something that we can hand over to the client at the end, and that will be usable, and they will have all the components that will be usable for the maintenance of the building. I don't think we've reached that stage yet, at least not in the projects we're involved in. BIM is more an instrument to reduce costs, risk, and time. So the approach we take is to modelize solely things that must be modelized for needs such as analysis, validation, and so forth. If we're steel manufacturers, we need more sophisticated models. But for the BIM purposes, to have all the nuts and bolts is not really necessary. So this allows these big projects, which easily can, the French term, crash our modelization models. So it allows us to bring it to a framework that's more manageable. Documentation. Documentation of the interference that we discover. We're responsible to have a follow-up register, what has to be corrected, what has been identified, and we participate as well in 3D reviews. It's good to have reports, but in the course of reviews, if you don't have someone who can easily navigate, and the person who can best explain the problem is not necessarily the same person who will be best at navigating within the software. So if you want to have validation meetings that are effective, it's important to have both type of work. So we also use the models for scheduling. We can see the calendar. We integrate our models with the production schedule in order to be able to demonstrate to the client what was supposed to happen and what in fact did happen. Same thing with the soil, for instance, how it was modelized. There is an investment to be made to have animation, but the added value for your client is great. The client will much better understand, especially when we're working directly with the owner. They're not necessarily people who are in the construction industry, so it's much easier for them to understand models in 3D instead of working solely with Microsoft projects or schedules. Microsoft project is huge, so it's easier to follow with animation and to go forward to back up whatever is needed with the 3D process. So this is a project that is another project where we had an important role for the BIM management. I use these projects as an example because they cover all of the BIM process, both the design and the construction phases. We call them virtual construction services. So the second project, Cathay Pacific Cargo Terminal, also in Hong Kong, spread out over, the mandate was a 5-year mandate. It's a new super cargo terminal. So for the design, we worked for the owner, but when we were building per se, the owner asked that we be specified within the scope of the GC, who had to hire us to continue the execution of the project and to make sure that the BIM would be done within the course of this project. So the project I was talking to you before, most of the modelization is done for the partners because very few people did the modelization. For the cargo terminal, we worked closely with the design partners who did 3D modelization. The cargo terminal that is automated, initially, it's huge equipment designed by Siemens that ensures that the cargo is moved in an automated manner. It's a huge machine, 7 stories high, with all sorts of conveyors and tools to move it. And the objective is to build the building around this equipment.
You can't along the way say, okay, we need to move things over 6 inches. It takes years to design and build. So when it arrives, we need to have a building that was really conceived or designed around it with the accesses, so for trucks to move around inside, and that it'll all work out. So we started with the Siemens model. We work with architects, MEPs, architects, some we work with Revit, some AutoCAD 2D. We had to convert in these situations. And that was during the design phase. When we got to the building phase in this project, the interesting element, if you want to call it that, the contractor decided to review the strategy of the cement structure. We'd rather have cast in place, so you'd have a precast approach. And we had to redo the model, the analysis, validation, in order to make sure that there's no interference. And the contractor decided to take a structural engineer that was different from the one who had done the original structure. So I think you'll understand that we ended up in situations whereby there was interference, but it was the old model. On this side, the old model hadn't been touched. This new one, it was a new model. We had 2 engineers. So we needed to coordinate among these different people. And it was the kind of thing that if it had been in 2D, there would have been a possibility of huge problems. So doing it in 3D gave us an edge. So in this case, when we did, the precast concrete, we used that approach because in the size of the project, it was easier for us to do so. The technology was better adapted to this approach. So we had a group of people who were on site, worked with different people from construction teams, and it was a partnership all along. The success factors, well, it's the involvement of the stakeholders or the participants. We've seen it with the level of the MTR and the Cathay Pacific Cargo Terminal. If the client at Cathay Pacific, if he hadn't held his own and said, I want it this way, I want it to work this way, I don't allow anyone to deviate from the process, well, many would have said, look, no, if I do this, there's such and such a thing, such a problem. You need a client who's serious for the process to work. If the client doesn't hold his own, there are many people, unfortunately, in the industry who'd like to go back to the old model, where they don't see the advantages of this approach. And so you need a client who's very solid and knows where he wants to end up. A good work methodology to have a group of people who say, look, I create models. If you haven't agreed on how to develop models, how to name things in the model, we can't use these elements for analysis and for exchange, for sharing. We need to agree before we begin the project. And that's something that requires, say, well, look, Who's in charge of this? Because otherwise, everybody wants to impose their own need. And there are, it's true, constraints where the structural engineer has needs that are not the same as the structure detailer. So we enable, as I was saying earlier, everyone to keep their own model because they do have specific needs while enabling the integration of things for analysis and collaboration. So, good knowledge of technology, well, there's many of those. To impose projects where one technology will do everything, we have not yet seen such a thing. Whether we do the BIM or the structure, there's different technologies involved, and we need to work with software suppliers in order to increase their interoperability, remaining aware that the advantage on the market is to say, well, look, I do things the other doesn't do, so they'll always want to promote their own. But experience in construction and in design, BIM team that are made up only of modelers, you may not get the result that you want. You'll get models, but not maybe models you can use. There needs to be a collaboration among people who have construction experience and people who can do modeling. And when I look at things today, more and more we teach in schools to create models, to use software, but what we see with our modelers is that often people will say, hey, the model enables you to do that. The software lets me do it, so it's good. That doesn't mean, because the software lets you do it, that it is the most efficient way of doing it, and that it takes into consideration various constraints with regards to the construction site, the type of materials. You need people who can analyze and understand what is going on and how it'll be used. The other thing we benefited from was the support from the IT team because we were working remotely at times. So you need a certain understanding of knowledge and infrastructure when you interact with people. And to conclude, I have a little video. It's about 2 minutes long. That'll give you an idea, perspective of things overall. What was done in framework with this project with the different models that we had available? Okay. Intelibuild, conception services and virtual construction. The Cathay Pacific Cargo Terminal project in Hong Kong used the BIM process to save time and money during the construction phase. The handling system was modelized by Siemens and coordinated with the concrete structure with Intelibuild. All of it was connected to the cargo delivery system. So the model enabled self-simulation showing the customer the functioning. The BIM model was used to coordinate the different systems in the building, the air vents, electrical cable support, and cargo systems. Intelibuild developed an identification system for interferences among different architectural models, structural, plumbing, and air vents in order to resolve conflicts. The Intelibuild team was set up on the construction team itself and worked closely with the general contractor. A virtual simulation of construction enabled the planning of the concrete joists and the MEP components using prefab modules was also planned in the virtual construction phase of Intelibuild. It is an efficient method and a lower cost for the contractor. Detailed reports were produced to examine the safety systems required to install the different piping systems in the different floors. They were able, with the system, to modelize large areas, large rooms, setting up of pumps. The great cooling system on the roof was also checked and evaluated. A comparison with the BIM models and the on-site conditions showed the precision and the high level of detail of the BIM system from Intelibuild. Everything that was set up within the building had first been modelized in 3D. Cable support, ducts, pipes were installed exactly where they had been planned in the virtual construction model. The design and virtual construction models enabled Cathay Pacific Airways and the owner and the general contractor to save time and money in order to build their project.